Have you got it going?
Yeah.
Oh, Patty wanted me to do some more filming, and so I decided I'd take some notes and bring up some pictures. When Leanne was about 4 months old, I had to wean her because I just was not a good milk cow. And it was at that time that I got pregnant again. I don't know. This is hard for me to do because it just is. Okay. Jeanette Warinsky lived in the basement of that little house that we lived in. We lived in Chickweed's house. That's Emmylou's father. And it was at 3808 South, 23rd East. And Janine and Don Warinsky lived in the basement of it. And we really had a good relationship with them. Janine and I shared an old wringer washer that was in the basement. And it was really kind of difficult because I was used to having a washing machine that had what they called a bladder that would squeeze it dry. But when we moved over to the wheat place, why, they didn't want me to use that because it used more water. And so Janine and I shared this washer in the basement. And we really got along well. Janine would take care of Leanne when I had to go to the doctor, and we just really enjoyed each other. Janine had a baby, her youngest, Julie, had hydrocephalus on the brain, and Janine would sit and rock that little baby and love it so much. And she had a little girl that was a few years older, and her name was Karen. But we really enjoyed that little house. It was a little 2-bedroom house. It had a small kitchen, but it was sure a lot better than living above the bakery with all of the bakery smells and climbing the steps and having to go through the kitchen to get into the living room. And so we really did like it. But when Patty was born, November the 19th, 1955, it's hard for me when this is filming to think through things. Why, I felt like my head was never out of the diaper pail. With 2 of them in diapers, I was just always rinsing them out in the toilet, wringing them out, putting them in a pail, going down and washing them, and then folding them. There was no such thing as Pampers at that time. And so it was really kind of hard. But one of the hardest things was that Leanne was walking. And I'm going to backtrack for just a second and show a picture. This is a picture of our first car, and I hope I'm holding it in the right place. Looking out from in front of the house where we were. And this is a picture of Leanne taking her first step. I hope it's getting it. After she turned 1 year old, we bought her the new shoes, she was able to walk. And this is a picture that we gave Leanne a little Betsy Wetsy doll to help prepare her for the new baby. And so she would sit there, and she was never really into dolls that much, but she was cute with that little Betsy Wetsy doll. And Patty, of course, was 12 days late, just like her sister Leanne. When the doctor started me, why, it was almost an explosive birth, and it was really kind of hard because I just had a little bit of gas that they clamped over me, and she came so rapidly. But Patty was such a cute little baby. Her hair was very soft and fluffy, and you could twirl it, put it in little curls around her face, and she always looked so cute with little pixie haircuts. And she was a good little baby. She didn't have colic. She was a happy baby most of the time. Now, when I would be changing her diaper or taking care of her, Leanne started going to the front door and opening it and going outside, and this really panicked me because we lived on a street that was just north of Olympic High School, and it was quite an affluent area, and a lot of the kids had cars, and they would almost drag race up and down 23rd East. And so when Leanne would open that door and go outside, I was just afraid she would get hit by a car. We asked the Wheats if we could enclose the front just a little bit so that she would have a place to play, but they didn't think it was necessary. So by spring, we decided we needed to leave there because we just couldn't afford to let her go out the front door while I was taking care of Patty or otherwise distracted. And Leanne was very independent. She did what she wanted to do. So we had bought a lot from Chickweed, and it was a half-acre lot just down from Stan Emilu, and it had fruit trees on it, and it was so wonderful, and we were so excited about that lot. But we decided we better sell that lot and buy a house where we could keep the kids safe, because 23rd East was not a safe place to live. And so we looked at a lot of different places, including ones that Leah Wright, who we later became to know quite well, in Granger. She showed us houses in Granger, but it was not a good situation because the houses she was showing us had cracks up the ceiling, and she was willing to give us a good price for our lot, but we didn't buy one from her. And then Stan, working in the bank, had a couple that came in and mentioned to him they were going to sell their house, and their name was DeGorier. And they had a house at what was it, 13, what was it? 13, what, South?
1398 or something.
1390, oh yes, I think it was 1398 South, McClellan Street, and McClellan was on 1040 East. And it was an older home. It was 100 years old, but it was only $6,900, and they'd take $500 cash down, and our payments were, what, about $39 a month. And
yeah, we were on 4.5% interest.
Yeah, 4.5% interest. Most of it went into principal.
Yeah.
And we went and looked at the house and decided it would do for, you know, an in-between house. And it was a 2-story house. And so we bought it. And Lane came and helped me paint the front room. And it had a large front bedroom, and it was sunny, and it had a bay window, and this is where we put Patty and Leah Ann. And then there was a bedroom that was between the bathroom and the girls' room that Burton and I took. And my mother offered to pay for our 220 wiring to be put in the house. And I took her up on it, and we bought a washer and dryer, and hallelujah. Oh, to be able to have a washer and a dryer and have the pressure of the diapers taken off for me was just absolutely wonderful. We really
I think you'd still have the pressure of the diapers because you were still doing real diapers.
Well, yes, and you had to fold them, but after, you know, doing them in a wringer washer, this was much, much, much easier. We really enjoyed that house, and we enjoyed the neighbors because they were really nice, especially the one to the north of us and across the street. Virginia McMahon had her daughter Donita that Leanne just loved, and across the street there were 2 little girls, Julie and I can't remember the name of the other one, Karen, and they were cute little girls that both the little girls played with. And so we enjoyed our time there on McClellan Street. And we stayed there until Burton decided the pressures of being president of HICO was too much. And he wanted to move. In the meantime, because I didn't have a car and I didn't have a way to get any place, and Burton's attitude was always, well, if you want it, you know what you can do, which meant I could go to work teaching. And so I did. For 2 years, I taught part-time at the Department of Practical Nursing at the Slick College. It was Salt Lake Technical College at that point, Trade Tech, actually. And I taught in the Department of Practical Nursing. I taught foods and nutrition and family life and skills and rehabilitation skills and things like that. And I really enjoyed that, teaching the adults in the Department of Practical Nursing. But Burton decided that he would rather be on his own and go someplace else. There's one thing I should mention, and there's a picture here. We were so broke and so poor. This is a picture of Patricia and one of our many, many cats. Right after we moved into that house, as soon as we could afford it, we had carpet put in. And they hadn't really nailed down the tacks between the living room and the girls' bedroom. And Patty crawled across it and cut deep into her knee, and she still carries that scar to this day. And we were so broke because Burton was making about $300 a month, and it was kind of tough going. A year after Patricia was born, we still owed $69 to the doctor of the $150 I think it cost to have her. So I made little horses that were like pillows. I hope you can see this. For Dr. Wetzel, and sold it to him for $15, and that cut down our pediatrician bills some. And Dr. Hall had said if we had 6 children, he was the doctor, that he would deliver one of them free. And so I talked to him about that because we just weren't bringing that bill down very quickly. And he said, okay, you can do that. So I made one of the little horses for him, and he let us have the rest of the doctor bill. This is a picture of the Trade Tech College as it was then. One of the things that we really like to do is we went down to Manti for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter. And the kids would always go up to the Temple Hill. And in the winter, they would sled down it. And at Easter time, they would roll their eggs down it, and then they'd roll themselves down it. And at Thanksgiving, why, we would have Thanksgiving at my mother's. And she always fixed a real terrific meal. But another thing that we really like to do is go out to Talmadge, because Fred would always help them with the horse. Grandpa always had a horse that they could ride, and Fred would let them ride the horse. And they were always so good to us. Mary would always fix something real special for us to eat. And so that was really fun. But Burton, in one of his many trips with HICO, had been to Bakersfield, California. And when he decided he didn't want to be president of HICO anymore and he wanted to move, he thought of Bakersfield, California, because it was far enough away from HICO that he wouldn't be competing with HICO, and that he would have his own business. And that was okay with me. And I had had wisdom teeth that had a problem. And, well, let's see, I ought to back up. One day walking home from primary that I was president of, why, I stumbled on the sidewalk and I realized that there was something wrong with my leg. And so I went to see the doctor, and I had a big, as big as my thumb, a tumor in my groin, and they did surgery and took it out, and that kind of took care of that problem. But at that same time, right before I had the surgery or right after, I got pregnant again.
That was benign, I think.
That was benign tumor. It was called a leguminous. Okay, are we still?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
Just wanted to-
But it was kind of tough. And it was right after that that my wisdom teeth really started giving me a lot of trouble. They were embedded, impacted, and infected. And so I had to go and have them taken out. And the dentist had a problem because I was pregnant and they had to be very careful what they gave me for pain. And as he was taking it out on the right side, he hit the tooth next to the wisdom tooth and broke that tooth off. And then he decided he'd better pull it because it was too damaged to be saved. And so as we were getting ready to move to Bakersfield, I had mentioned to him that we had a boat that we needed to sell. We had bought a boat from Glenn Miller in Manti so that we'd have our own boat, because the little red boat with its 25 horsepower motor that we learned to ski on at Palisade and at Bear Lake, we had enjoyed it so much, but we decided we wanted a boat of our own, and so we bought this white boat which had a more powerful motor. We just had it a very short time and needed to do some work on it. But I mentioned to the dentist that we needed to sell it because we were going to move. And I think he thought that I was going to sue him because of the damage that he had done to that tooth. And he bought it, which was good for us because we were able to get the money out of that boat and go ahead and get ready to go to Bakersfield. Well, Burton loaded me in the car when my jaw was all swollen and I had dry sockets and I had salt solution, and we had this new station wagon, and so I just laid in the back of it, and Mama took care of the two girls, and I was pregnant, but he took me down to show me this Garden of Eden, Bakersfield, California. And when we got there, he was so disappointed because all of that beautiful green was gone and there was nothing but brown, because everything had dried up and almost withered away. But he decided he still wanted to move to Bakersfield so that he could do business on his own and not compete with Heiko. So in August of, what year was it? 1958. He built and bought and put together a great big huge machine to make, what was it called, Burton? This
Hand solution?
Heiko's hand.
No, it was
cleaner.
1958, not 1968.
Oh, didn't I say 58?
Yeah. Yeah, you did.
Oh, I thought
Okay.
Because I was 3
What
years.
was it called?
3 years old.
That
Slick skin.
Slick skin, right.
Slick skin,
That
yeah.
slick skin. And so we had this great big huge trailer that we were pulling behind the station wagon.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before they had coolers in cars too. And it took us several days to get down to Bakersfield because there was no such thing as I-15. And I remember going up that Jean grade. It was really tough pulling that trailer with that big, big machine in. But we made it down there and stayed in a hotel for a couple days and then found a house on Lake Street where we were able to rent. And then he found a place for the business that was on California Avenue on this street. And so we were really lucky. It was kind of a nice house, and we rented it with an option to buy. But in the end, we didn't buy it because that area of town wasn't as nice as what we thought we should have for having to raise the children in. And so we settled down to Bakersfield, and we had a wonderful time in Bakersfield. I acted as the secretary and answering the phone and keeping the books, and Burton would make the slick skin and the wax and whatever else and go out and sell it. But one year after we'd been there, why, he decided that he didn't want to do that anymore. Someone had talked him into selling for New York Life Insurance Company, and I was up in
Metropolitan.
Metropolitan. That's right. Ours were New York Life, but it was selling for Metropolitan Life. And so while I was up in Utah, he sold the business, lock, stock, and barrel, and went to work for the insurance company. And I was not happy about that because we made more money. We cleared $500 a month, and I thought that was great. But anyway, he didn't like selling the insurance, so he was not very satisfied after 3 months. But we had friends down in Bakersfield that were really good, and up a couple doors from us when we bought a house on Tangerine, there lived Nancy Stern, and she had a daughter, Karen, that was Leah Ann's age, and a daughter, Susie, that was Patty's age, and a baby, Connie, that was Cindy's age. And right before we moved to the house on Tangerine, we had a new baby, and that was Cynthia Louise Tew. And right after that, Patty really got sick, and we just didn't know what to think about it. But the glands in her body would swell up here once again as big as my thumb, and she was really sick. So we took her to the doctor, and he diagnosed her with what is called San Joaquin Valley fever. And she just really had a tough time. I should backtrack to one thing that happened to Patty while we were living on McClellan Street. Patty was all smiles and happy, or she would get very angry and have temper tantrums. And I asked Dr. Wetzel, what do I do about this? She's such a good baby most of the time, but when she has a temper tantrum, she just screams and screams. And he said, fill the tub with cool water and put her in the tub when she's screaming like that, and it'll stop the cycle. So I did that once.
Heck, it was cold.
She still remembers it. And I did it once, and it did. She never screamed and had tantrums like that ever again. But I felt like it was a cruel thing to do, and so I never did do it again. And it was good that she stopped having the tantrums. She would be unhappy sometimes, but not have the tantrums that she had. And it wasn't until much later that we found out that she was bipolar. And maybe the seeds of this were evident in this action when she was just a little tiny girl. But we thought that a lot of her illness problems stemmed from the San Joaquin Valley fever, and I think it did, because when she gets sick, she gets so terribly sick. It's just really, really bad. But let's go back to Bakersfield. Leah Ann started school because the deadline for school starting at the age where there was the cutoff date was at the end of December, and so Leah Ann made it into first grade when she was still just real young. Well, she had a full year of kindergarten and then at Hart School, and then went into first grade, and she had been in first grade a month before we moved back to Salt Lake area. And Patty also had a month of kindergarten before we moved from Bakersfield. But Burton was not happy in his job, and we had been back up to Utah, and he was offered a job with High Summer Hayes and Alma Peterson, and they guaranteed that it wouldn't compete with Hico. And so Burton decided that we should move back to Utah, because every chance we got, we would try to come back to Utah. We realized that we really needed to be back in Utah. And so, in October of 60, we moved back to Utah. And I'm going to have her turn this off for a while I collect my thoughts.